Well, hello everybody. My name is Nick, and I'm here with a special guest today, Arnold Sophia. Would you like to just sort of introduce yourself to everybody?
Well, hi. I'm a student here at UARC. I study music composition and theory, and I am I was born in Mexico, and I came to the U.S. when I was 10 years old, and I became a citizen. In It was between the summer of my junior and senior year of high school.
Hmm. So, today I wanted to actually discuss something that has sort of been a recurring debate going on recently in our contested, heated political times in the U.S. Sort of just about debates around kind of just the idea of citizenship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what this discussion is going to be focused on today is sort of just what citizenship means to you
Mm-hmm.
as someone who has obtained it in the United States, right?
Yes.
And I think something to sort of kind of frame this discussion, I actually want to play a clip is of Vice President J.D. Vance sitting down for an interview with Face the Nation, talking about a sort of the recent actions by the Trump administration on the concept of birthright citizenship. So, appointed by Ronald Reagan, I think you'd agree, has some conservative credentials. Sure. Paused the order to end birthright citizenship, calling it blatantly unconstitutional. How do you reconcile this challenge to the 14th Amendment to the Constitution?
So I obviously disagree with that judge, and these things, some of them will be litigated. That's the nature of our constitutional system. But here's the basic idea of President Trump's view on this. If you are a lawful permanent resident or a legal immigrant who plans to stay, your children, of course, should become American citizens. But let's say you're the child of an ambassador. You don't become.
But that's not part of it.
Well,
There's already a carve out
that is
having
an
to do with
important
kids of
principle.
diplomats.
But we're saying that carve out should apply to anybody who doesn't plan to stay here. If you come here on vacation and you have a baby in an American hospital, that baby doesn't become an American citizen. If you're an illegal alien and you come here temporarily, hopefully, your child does not become an American citizen by virtue of just having been born on American soil. It's a very basic principle in American immigration law that if you want to become an American citizen and you've done it the right way, and the American people in their collective wisdom have welcomed you into our national community, then you become a citizen. But temporary residents, people who come in here, whether legally or illegally, and don't plan to stay, their children should become American citizens. I don't know any country that does that or why we would be different.
Oh, well, this is a country founded by immigrants.
Well, this is a country founded
a unique country.
This is a very unique country, and it was founded by some immigrants and some settlers. But just because we were founded by immigrants doesn't mean that 240 years later that we have to have the dumbest immigration policy in the world. No country says that temporary visitors, their children, will be given complete access to the benefits and blessings of American citizenship. America should actually look out for the interests of our citizens first, and that means, again, if you're here permanently and lawfully, your kid becomes an American citizen. If you're not here permanently, if you're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States and don't plan to be, why would we make those people's children American citizens permanently?
Federal judge appointed.
So he calls it the dumbest immigration policies in the world,
Right.
mind you.
Right.
So, what do you think about Vice President Vance's comments? Just sort of general thoughts.
General thoughts. Well, he would be removing like hundreds of years of presidents within the U.S., but also internationally. Since that idea of birthright citizenship goes back to ancient Romans. You brought up the name, and I totally forgot what it's called. It's based on your birth.
Desert soils.
Sure. And even that is, and then its other idea was based on it being on legacy, which is like you inherit citizenship through your lineage, but at the same time, even that even that argument is heavily based on discrimination of different people, of classism, of racism, because that was the same argument that was used to justify the inheritance of slavery. And I mean, those comments are just founded in a lot of nativism, like
Right.
naiveness of just how people's lives aren't linear. Like, you cannot just put somebody's life within a strict set of laws, because if there's a life isn't perfect and it just doesn't fit within the framework.
Yeah, no, I think that was really well put. Um, I mean, it's sort of interesting about these debates about citizenship in the United States that a country founded on the idea of you were born here and you got to become an American, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sort of no matter where you came from, you could become an American.
Yep.
That is sort of speaks kind of like to like looking at the concept of what citizenship means as sort of flexible in the sense that it can also be something that is inclusive for everybody, but also kind of exclusive, like the way that JD Vance or Vice President Vance might view it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even with that, like the exclusiveness, again, like not every single life is linear. Every life is crazy. There's a really traumatizing stories of these people, and they're wanting to limit that even more and more,
Mm.
despite the fact that this land was built on the fact that they keep promoting it being the land of opportunity,
Mm.
which is biased.
Mm. And I guess kind of delving a little bit more about citizenship, like sort of the different kind of ways you can look at it. There's sort of in the literature there's differences. I mean, in terms both of what you would describe as legal and substantive citizenship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sort of these two ways of thinking about it. Legal citizenship, as implies, it's sort of more of a formal status given by the nation. Sort of like, you become higher, you come from like a green card holder, like a permanent resident to a citizen, right?
Yep.
And then you get more, what I think is a little bit more interesting is sort of the substantive citizenship, sort of like the rights, the actual rights, the participation in the recognition by people and their experiences that regardless of your status is sort of viewing of what being a citizen means, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my thoughts on that are that whenever you like, I know people who have personally have gone through both ways,
Right.
and again, each life is not linear.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's such a basic thing to understand, and I generally feel like as if people don't have like like the government hasn't had enough compassion or enough openness to accept the fact that some of these laws actively would make the people who once benefited from them furious back then. If you were to have, like, for example, an European immigrant that were now told that they cannot seek asylum for this, and nowadays you have like an immigrant from Latin America who, for the same reason, is trying to seek asylum, like, those laws would not apply anymore. It would actively cause an active outrage,
Mm.
and mostly it would, and unfortunately, like, racism is a very real thing in this country, and unless if there is a person of white lineage who is directly affected by it, it would probably not have any sort of movement towards it being resolved.
Mm. Sorry about that. I kind of want I found this interesting. It's from American Value Survey in 2021. It sort of describes, I mean, kind of moving our focus a little bit to something else. about traits associated with being truly American. But and this is also done by party affiliation, and um, just kind of wanted to show it to you and see what sticks out to you, like just kind of if something jumps out to you.
Well, first off, I find that most interestingly enough is that in the believing of individual freedom, such as freedom of speech,
Mm,
that when it comes to like the three indicators of the scale, um, that they're relatively close together.
yeah,
And at the same time, being of Western European heritage, again, they're pretty close. But then I find it really interesting that being able to speak English, there's a there's a big difference,
right.
a big difference. Also in the believing of God, of a Christian God, also as well. I find those to be I found those to be interesting
Mm,
because I mean, if you're wanting to truly be, well, also it's kind of contradicts the accepting people of diverse racial and religious
right.
backgrounds. It's pretty close.
It seems like these people who want to define what being like
Yeah,
citizenship and what being I mean ultimately what American means. They're not really sure.
they're not really sure, no, because it's like diverse racial and religious backgrounds. But then again, I mean, I'm seeing from this chart specifically that 45 Democrat voters would say that not really as much compared to 78 of Republican, which is a big difference.
Right.
And again, being able to speak English, I mean, 68 to 93, I mean, diverse racial and religious backgrounds, you're bound to have differences of language and in religion and plus in culture. I mean, because religion and culture go hand in hand, they cannot be separated,
Mm,
which I find to be pretty interesting. That this diagram shows what's it called,
what?
contradiction.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
contradiction.
So, I mean, I guess kind of just to ask, like, do you think that these categories that who say that somewhat support being truly American, do you think these are fair?
I find some of them to be pretty accurate. I would agree that the first three the first three I would say I would agree with the most.
Right.
Although when that every citizen, I am aware of like the laws that prevent some prisoners not being allowed, which I still find that to be kind of crazy. But I would agree with the top three as being, not as compared to like the other ones, like for example, like being able to speak English, being a Christian, believing in a God. I don't find those to be necessarily defining of being an American.
Right. So, I think something else kind of falling on the line of that. There is a an article written by Samuel P. Huntington, who has passed away. He is called the Hispanic Challenge,
Mm-hmm.
and so it kind of presents sort of the inflow of Hispanic immigrants, and he characterizes it as threatening to divide the United States and two peoples, two cultures, and two languages. Unlike past immigrant groups, Mexicans and other Latinos have not assimilated into mainstream U.S. culture, forming instead their own political and linguistic enclaves from Los Angeles to Miami, and rejecting what he describes as the Anglo Protestant values that built the American dream.
Well, my thought from that
And
is I immediately
what,
disagree.
right? So, what did you say to Mr. Huntington?
Well, first off, I would disagree with Mr. Huntington
Right.
with saying that we don't assimilate to this culture,
Mm,
which is completely false. I am a Mexican immigrant speaking in this microphone in English.
mm,
That it with itself is assimilating. A person, if you go out and you can, like, the fact that even Peso Pluma came locally to this area,
mm.
or even that now we have Bad Bunny, who is now being played on the radio and things like that, you cannot tell me that it's not an assimilation of culture. It is only welcoming it and an inclusion of it. You cannot tell me that Taco Bell is not Tex-Mex is an inclusion of is a merge of both cultures.
Right.
And to understand what he's trying to say is basically saying that it's causing a divide. Well, yes, in some senses it could be causing a divide, but at the same time it's causing a lot of interaction. And with interacting with different racial groups, you're actively contributing to its unification. So I would completely disagree with that dude. Like,
Right.
I don't, like,
It's,
what are you thinking?
you might want to say some other stuff too.
En español, porque después me meto en problemas.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think it's kind of interesting comparing sort of the survey that we were talking about with what the Hispanic challenge what he was asserting. It sort of presents this like idea of just what how do people want citizenship to be defined, right? Like
Mhm.
what does it mean to be an American citizen?
See, within that, a reality that a lot of people face,
Right.
that I have personally faced, is you can be a citizen on paper,
Mm,
but to another person's eyes, I will forever be a Mexican.
mm,
I might identify myself as being, yes, I am Mexican born. I do have Mexican citizenship as much as I have American citizenship.
right.
But to another person, I will never stop being seen as a Mexican.
Mm. And I mean, personally, I mean, just kind of for myself, I mean, it's so sad that people sort of resign themselves to like this narrow view of what an American citizen is, you know?
And not just that, even I personally believe on the fact that in the world that we're living in, where there's been more connection than ever between countries, I find it impossible for the idea of a singular citizenship to keep being the standard. I find that more and more as we progress through the ages, there would be a more conceptualized idea of being a global citizen.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, actually, to your point, last year in March of 2024, the German Reichstag, they passed a bill that would allow those applying for German citizenship to actually keep the other citizenship. They could be dual nationals.
Hmm.
And I think it kind of speaks to your point that there's going to be, in our age of globalization, we're more connected, for better or worse, connected to each other more and more. And people are now being able to travel around the world
Get
and,
married to each other,
yeah,
build a
and
life.
sort of these mixing of cultures where, you know, it means a lot more
Hmm.
than just being white, speaking English, believing in God, you know, being born in the U.S., being of Western European heritage. You know, it I think it's going to cause a large reckoning for a lot of people who hold on to a traditional binary sense of, or even like one-dimensional view of what it means being a citizen, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
it's about to happen.
Yeah. Um, was there anything else you would like to leave behind for everybody? You want to know?
Um, mm, I mean, I guess my last point. I mean, yeah, the government and people are eventually going to accept the fact that everything's too interconnected now to keep it separate.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome.